I think my career itself has been pretty disrupted by my own decisions. I don't think I walked the straight path, but I think along the way, each of these industries that I've worked in, obviously taught me something new. But more importantly, I can see each of these industries have been disrupted significantly by AI over the last 2 to 3 years, right? And we'll talk about some of that as well as obviously other industries. I know that you are all coming from different backgrounds, and therefore I'm going to try and keep it a little broad, not focus on media and marketing, which is pretty much my domain, but keep it as broad as possible so that it's relevant to most of you. And I think, look, I call myself a learner for life because honestly, I don't think there's any other way to survive in the ecosystems we live in, right? Unless you are committed to continuously learning, you're never ever going to succeed in your career. Because no matter how much experience you have, no matter which B school or engineering college you passed out of, no matter how well you've done in your academics, the moment you enter the workforce, you are going to be subjected to a significant amount of disruptions every single year of your career. And the only way to keep ahead of those disruptions and to keep growing is to ensure that learning is something that never stops in your life. I think it's helped me definitely along the way. I know that I'm not done enough, and I wish I could have done more. But to my mind, it's the mantra that any what do you call as knowledge worker needs to definitely adapt in their life, right? And so since we're talking about the future of work, I mean, let's start with work itself, right? I mean, work itself has evolved. The way we work in different organizations, the expectations organizations have from us, right? I remember life when I started market research, with Kantar, was very, very different than what market research is today. And even if I look at other industries I've worked with, whether it's advertising, broadcasting, whether it's being in a media agency, being an entrepreneur, clearly the role of technology and specifically AI, is very, very visible in all of these areas. I mean, just a quick example, right? When I started market research, it was all about meeting consumers, in their homes where they were and, doing long consumer surveys. And typically it used to be pen and pencil back then. And we had started using computers, but obviously connectivity in, like 1998, 99 was not great at all. So if you wanted to do market research, you had to go and meet consumers, right? And that was all real data captured from real consumers. You know, let's skip decades and come to today, right? I work with a company that has the data of 1.4, 1 point, close to a billion Indians. And that data is all synthetic data, right? So some of it is based on actual survey, but they've used AI to create synthetic data for every single of those billion Indians. So they are using AI, using Gen AI. They are able to create data using probabilistic techniques, obviously run by AI algorithms to actually define a profile of every single Indian in those 1 billion Indians, starting with base data captured in a survey, but then layering on more and more data just using synthetic data. And that itself is phenomenal, right? Because without even necessarily doing market research, you can now get a rich profile of a customer without having to leave your desk in office, right? All delivered to you on an Excel sheet or on a dashboard. And that's a significant leap that's happened. So even something like market research is being disrupted by AI as we speak, right? And of course, the future of work definitely depends upon the future of organizations, right? How do they evolve? What are the expectations of stakeholders, shareholders, and of course, customers, and how are those changing? And of course, the circumstances in which you're doing business and how are those evolving? Because eventually, organizations need to adapt. And for organizations to adapt, knowledge workers within the organizations need to adapt as well, right? And given the role that tech and AI is playing in most organizations, the need to adapt is almost becoming a continuous one, right? It's not static. You cannot expect what happened this year will happen next year. It's something that you have to keep grappling with. I mean, and just talking about evolution, right? I mean, if you look at context, right? Baiju started in the context of COVID, grew in the context of COVID, expected the market to stay exactly the way it was during COVID. Market changed, business model crashed. They had over leveraged themselves in terms of buyouts. And eventually you're seeing a significant value, significant investor value being eroded, right? If you look at Nike, and if you look at the Nike results, the global financial results in June, They lost about $5 billion in market capitalization. And this story of Nike starts in 2019 when Nike decided that they're going to become predominantly a D2C brand. And they started pulling out Nike from physical stores, which are non-Nike stores, which are multi-brand stores, and they started pulling out of marketplaces like Amazon, Lazada, etc. And fast forward 4 years, post-COVID, Nike has lost significant market share because their entire focus moved to D2C and digital, and they forgot that the consumer continues to want to buy, shoes in multi-brand stores because consumers want variety. Right. So a brand like Nike, also iconic brand, made the colossal mistake of focusing on one part of distribution and eventually has eroded significant amount of shareholder value. And of course, the one big thing that's happened in India, which has again disrupted businesses, is brands in the investment space, right? Zerodha Grow. So a cultural change that's happened where young Indians are now deciding that, look, if I want to make money quickly and fast, then one way to do it is actually look at investing in the stock market, though it is not quick and fast, but it's a better investment than keeping your money in your bank or putting your money in a fixed deposit. And that cultural behavior and change driven by many things, but also driven by brands like Grow and Zerodha. And what it's fundamentally done is it's taken away the job of the traditional, everyone used to have a stock market broker and they used to depend on that stock market broker to do their investing for them. And that job has been taken away completely, especially among young Indians who are pretty much doing their own investing using influencers online and using tips that they get from friends, etc. Not necessarily healthy, but that's the nature of the beast, right? So it's really disrupted one entire job that typically share brokers used to have, and every person had one stockbroker. Many friends used to get together and talk to one stockbroker, get that person to invest for them, and that model is crashing as we speak, right? If you look at technology, right, the government opened up UPI and Paytm continued to exist as a wallet for many years, by which time both PhonePe and GPay pretty much took away digital payments from Paytm. Then Paytm tried to pivot very late into UPI, by which time both PhonePe and GPay pretty much had 80-85% of the market. And if you look at even EVs today, right, legislation allowed for significant subsidies initially, but the moment state governments have pulled out subsidies, suddenly the cost of buying an electric bike has become fairly expensive compared to a ICE engine. And that itself is disrupting businesses, right? And each of these businesses, whether trying to prevent downfall or trying to ensure that they're maximizing the growth opportunity, technology has played a key role in every single one of them, right? Look at Q-commerce, right? I mean, probably one of the biggest changes in consumer behavior in India is that we've seen that, especially in the top 20 cities, on an average, Indians used to buy typical home products maybe 45, 50 times a year. It's now gone to 156 times a year. So they are buying products more often, but in smaller quantities. And a large part of it is coming from Q-commerce. Of course, Q-commerce is still very much a very metro and a large city phenomena. It still has to penetrate. But what it has fundamentally done is disrupted this category of both retail as well as even e-commerce, right? So Amazon had Amazon Pantry, Big Basket obviously was ruling the roost as far as pantries were concerned or online pantries were concerned. But Q-commerce like Zepto, Blinkit have come in and completely disrupted the market. And now Amazon and Flipkart are both scrambling to launch their own versions of it, right? Uh, Again, it may not necessarily be AI, but I think, again, a technology driven innovation in business has disrupted the market and is causing even big tech companies like Amazon and Flipkart and Walmart to kind of pivot and recognize that they've missed the opportunity, right? And even if you look at EVs today, EVs, two-wheelers are growing significantly in India. But if you look at the US, you look at the European market or the global market, you'll see that the dark blue is electric vehicles and the light blue is hybrid. And what you're seeing is that electric vehicles now are starting to come under some kind of scrutiny where there's belief that maybe pure electric vehicles are not the future and hybrid is probably the future, right? So What we are seeing in markets like Europe is now a larger focus on hybrid and not fully electric vehicles. Whereas in India, we are still at a growth phase. So again, what will happen is that India will potentially see the market again going through a downturn when pure electric bikes and even cars start actually declining and hybrid starts taking over, right? So the fact is that in any category you look at, there is a significant amount of uncertainty and disruption that is happening, largely because of technology, but also because of changes in legislation and the opening up of opportunities. So the fact is that whether there is AI or no AI, businesses are constantly getting disrupted, right? And I think that's something to remember because it's not just about AI. I think the very nature of the economy that we live in India is all about disruption. And the next 10 years is going to see this continue to happen. We're hardly seeing the tip of the iceberg in our market. It will continue to get disrupted. So, my one of the things I wanted to talk about is the fact that don't think about jobs of the future only from an AI perspective. Look at it from the fact that many industries that you are considering as a potential career will get disrupted because of technology at large and not just because of AI. Yes, AI will play a part in it, but disruption is something that you have got to learn to live with, right? But since we wanted to talk about AI, let's dive a little deeper, right? Look, I'm not an artificial intelligence expert. I have done like a PG in AI and ML specifically from a broad understanding of the space because in back in 2020 when I just before I became an entrepreneur, I realized that uh, this was an emerging area, and if I don't study and learn about it, I'll never be able to leverage it in the business that I was getting into. And clearly, as a professional, it was going to affect every part of my personal as well as part of my professional life, right? So I took the time out to do a 6-month course, and it's definitely helped me. Uh, because look what's happening to India, right? Eventually, why is AI growing in this country is because of this, right? Just the number of internet users. We are already at 750 million. Clearly, we're going to go to about 850 to 900 million. And then if you look at the various kind of digital related consumption moments that we can see in this country, these numbers after China are significantly large, right? In fact, if you look at digital transactions in India, we do digital transactions. We have 46% of the world's digital transactions happen in India. Now, each digital transaction is actually creating data of some consumer making some purchase somewhere. And all that data may not be available to one institute or one organization, but there is tons of just digital transaction data that we are creating in our country. And for those of you who are in technology, you'll have heard about Moore's law. So Moore's law was fundamentally that the storage capacity and the computing power of microchips will actually double every year, right? And that law has pretty much played out, which means that as more and more data has been created, the power of the chip to actually process that data has grown manifold, right? And that's why we know the success story of Nvidia. Nvidia in the last 6 months has become one of the most valuable companies in the world because the chips they make are pretty much going to drive a lot of this data processing that's happening across the world with all the data that's been generating by digital footprints. So what's happening is that you are not only in an ecosystem where tons of data is being created, but technology is keeping pace to manage that data, process that data, and therefore the ability to use that data. And a natural outcome of that is fundamentally artificial intelligence, right? And the reason I wanted to obviously show you Indian data, because in India as well, while historically we do not have tons of data, but now we're generating trillions and trillions of data every single month. And in every potentially majority of industries now have access to significant amount of data, which can be used to build very powerful artificial intelligence related products, or can be used for advanced analytics, or can be used to power machines, or can be used for in healthcare and in the space of medicine. And that is amazing because eventually if we have to compete with China, that's really the big gap between us and China, right? China has spent close to $20 billion over the last 10 years to build a significant knowledge base of artificial intelligence. And remember, their digital revolution happened, more than 2 decades before ours did. So they've been collecting data for that many more years, and now they're translating that data into powerful AI algorithms, which is driving a lot of the development and growth that China has seen over the last 20 years, right? And naturally, this is happening across the world, right? So we are already seeing blue collar jobs being affected. The last PwC report suggests that 20 million manufacturing jobs will actually get eliminated because of robotics and automation. And this is not far away. This is happening in Pimpri Chinchwad, right? So Tata Motors, their assembly line for Safari and for Harrier, and Harrier is a fairly large selling SUV, is managed completely by, I think, 29 women who manage the entire assembly line, because it does not require the heavy lifting of the past. I mean, not not to say that women can't do it, but the fact that because of the adoption of so much of robotics in the process of actually assembling a car, they can run it now uh, literally with an all-woman assembly line for both of these large-sized SUVs. And that's an indication of, again, how technology has not just disrupted the efficiency of the organization, but it's actually opened up automotive manufacturing to women, right? And that's, again, itself a disruption, right? Because automotive brands rarely considered bringing in women to work on the shop floor. Now there are women who are managing the entire assembly line because it's all run largely by robotics and AI with minimal amount of manual intervention, right? And the same thing we know is happening in e-commerce, right? This is Flipkart's first hybrid warehouse where humans and robots work together. So the entire assortment and of packages that come to the warehouse is done by robots. And of course, there is human intervention at some point of time in the entire journey. So again, it's not far away. It's not that this is happening in the United States or it's happening somewhere in Europe. This is all happening in India as we speak. And eventually, every single industry that you go into is being disrupted, right? I mean, I think one of the great examples, a friend of mine who works for an auto company said that, for an auto company, one of the critical things is that when a car is in warranty, they will get warranty claims from all their dealers across the country. So let's say you have 4,500 dealers, and even if every dealer generates, let's say, 2 or 3 warranties a week, you end up with a significant number of warranties which have to be approved. So the process historically was that it would come to their hub based out of Pune, and there was a team of around 35 people. They would physically check every warranty, check it against the purchase invoice, and then approve it on the system, right? And that process typically used to take them between 24 to 48 hours. What they did is they moved to an AI model, which fundamentally was a computer vision. So what it could do is that it could, all the dealer had to do was scan the warranty claim and send it by email. The machine would read the warranty, read the number, automatically match it to the number in the database and approve it online in an hour. That team then shrunk from 35 to 7 people, right? And that's an example of how AI is being adopted. Uh, and eventually, yes, it does lead to a loss of jobs, right? I mean, that's something we don't want to talk about, but the reality is that in many cases, AI will lead to automation, which will reduce the need for human intervention. Now, if you let's look at the retail space, right? If you look at the retail space, I'm sure that many of you would have shopped with at least 3 or 4 of these different touch points, right? You have the good old Kirana shop, which continues to exist across the country, including metros. Then you have the mega mart or supermarket where you go and buy on your own. Then, of course, you can buy through Google. You can obviously buy through Amazon. You can now buy significant number of products on Zepto and Blinkit, right? Today, you can buy an iPhone on Blinkit. You don't even have to buy an iPhone from Amazon or Netflix or from Flipkart. You can actually buy an iPhone from Blinkit and it will be delivered to you in 3 hours. Amazon will still take at least 24 hours to deliver it, but Blinkit can do it in 2 to 3 hours because the way they've designed the business model and distribution is completely different, right? Or you can buy products straight from your social media feed on Meta or Insta, or you can even buy products straight from your favorite influencers handle, right? Most of the influencers are moving to a model where they're now selling products versus just talking about products. So even if you look at just the retail ecosystem on how we buy products, if I keep aside the physical ecosystem of kirana shops and the mega marts and the let's say the mini marts, and if you move to any of these digital ecosystems, all of them have AI and ML running at the back, right? So there's some form of artificial intelligence which is ensuring that you as a customer are seeing products that are closer to what you want, are seeing the location of shops that are closer to your coordinates and where you live, are seeing product categories. Even, for example, when you buy a product online, you're leaving a digital footprint, and the next time you're searching for, let's say you buy a red color t-shirt, the next time you're searching for a t-shirt, you'll start seeing you're being shown red color t-shirts again as options. So all of this is being done by AI. So even as a customer today, when you're buying products in any of these spaces, except for the physical environment, which is still not touched but will happen soon, AI ML is playing a role in your life, right? And then of course we know the big tech and how they are disrupting it, and all of this again happening in India. So if you look at Google and Meta, now the way you can search on Google, right? There was only one way of searching or two ways of searching on Google. We could go to the Google bar and we could type out something that we wanted to search for, or you could use voice. Now Google allows you to use video to search. Now on Google, you can even just circle an image in a video and automatically it starts giving you information about the product. All of this, again, is being driven by AI to a large extent, right? So tech and AI coming together is allowing consumers to do a lot more, much more easily, right? And obviously, all of this will again, for example, just the video on the right, somebody searching for these goggles wants to know where I can buy them. You circle them and automatically Google throws up where can you buy these doggy, pet goggles. So you don't even have to go to an Amazon or a Flipkart or a Blinkit. Now on the content that you're watching, you can literally select a product and then go and buy it, right? So imagine what that is doing to companies who are trying to sell these products. They have a physical store. They may have a branded physical store. They may have a multi-brand physical store. Then they have presence on e-commerce marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart. They now have to be present in Q-commerce platforms like Blinkit and Zepto because consumers are buying products like this there as well. And now suddenly they need to ensure that they've optimized their availability online so that if a person on Google searches by just circling a product, they need to ensure that their product and brand comes up as one of the options. So imagine a marketer who was running a very simple marketing program saying, my job is to drive people footfalls into our branded stores so people can buy these products. Now has to think of at least 5 different channels every time they're planning a marketing campaign. Many of these channels, again, affected by AI and ML in some form or the other, right? And of course, creative, right? I mean, today on digital, the latest that Google has launched is, text to video, which means that if you are an influencer, you may not even have to go and shoot videos. You can just type in a text prompt and the Gen AI engine will actually generate a video. Now, just imagine, of course, the quality of these videos are still far from being superior, but that will change very, very quickly because what we saw 2 years back in text to video to what we are seeing today is a significant jump, right? Similarly, music, right? The ability for an amateur musician to create phenomenal sounding music using AI platforms is fantastic. You can create amazing music sitting at home without having all the expensive tech that is typically required in a good music studio to actually create fantastic music. Now, again, all of this is disrupting jobs that traditionally were done by, let's say, a graphic designer were traditionally done by a music composer, or were traditionally done by a videographer who actually went and shot videos, added special effects, added graphics to it, put supers on it, and then created a video maybe in about 7 to 10 days. AI is allowing that same person to do that job in a much shorter period of time. But it also means that it is disrupting that particular area, because many of the jobs, like let's say graphic design, editing a video, all of that can be done automatically by AI engines. So again, even in the content that you watch, the fact is that there is a role that AI ML is playing there. Uh, yeah, and forget about the simple stuff like marketing. Uh, if you look at just any single category, you'll see that Gen AI has an impact every single category, not just in marketing, but significant impact in whether it's logistics, whether it's retail, whether it's telco. And we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg, right? Because these are now models which are starting to be deployed in businesses. And over a period of time, they will evolve, they will become more and more powerful, and their ability to generate, the kind of results that these businesses are looking for will start becoming much better. So this is just some example of areas where the Google AI stack, in a way, is being deployed and used for various, kind of functions in different types of industries. So again, it's important to recognize that no matter which industry you are in, AI in some form or the other is already there, and all of this happening not just across the world but in India as well. You know, if I take auto as a sector, so this is what Google's AI products or Google's AI suite offers an automotive brand in this country, right from enabling research and development to enabling manufacturing to obviously enabling sales and marketing, which is just one part of it, to even driving future innovation, right? So uh, the fact is that even for auto brands today, when you, as simple as connecting your map to your screen in your car, to your microprocessor, which is embedded and connected to your engine, capturing data and potentially optimizing your fuel consumption automatically to ensure that you get the maximum possible efficiency from the car. All of this is being driven by AI and ML. So today, if you are in the auto industry or the auto sector, again, irrespective of whether you're in the R&D part of auto, whether you're in the manufacturing part of the auto, whether you're in marketing in auto, or you're in, again, let's say, a future innovation lab in an auto company, the truth is that AI and ML will play a key role in what you are doing. And what I'm talking about is what Google is offering in India to Indian automotive brands, right? So they are working with many Indian automotive brands in all of these spaces, right? And of course, Meta is not far behind. I think Meta is still not as, I think, powerful as the Google stack. So I think Meta is still very focused on ads, reels, videos, business messaging through WhatsApp, which is again becoming a critical part of many organizations. Product discovery, which is again AI ML led. But uh, I think still to see a lot more business applications compared to what Google is offering, right? And in Meta today, for example, if you run a campaign on Meta as a marketer, you don't even need to shoot multiple images. You can just use one static image of your cup of coffee, and you can change the background, you can change the headline, you can change the color scheme, all happening on the fly, all driven through AI algorithms. So even in a simple space like marketing, the role of AI ML is pretty much, I think, starting to disrupt the way we work, right? Typically, in 4 to 5 years back, you would get a creative agency to create at least 20 different versions of the ad that you wanted. Now you create one version, and then the machine can actually create multiple versions of it in a matter of few hours. In some cases, even on the fly in real time, right? And again, therefore, if you are in the marketing space, certainly you're going to see a lot of AI ML in your life. It's already a significant part of all digital marketing and will continue to grow, right? So I think the question is, And I'm sure that's a question. Yeah, where does that leave us as human beings, right? What's going to be our role in the future, right? And I think, look, we are knowledge workers, right? At the end of the day, uh, there's a reason why organizations need us, and I think eventually what the organization expects from each of us is how are we contributing to value for the organization. Value that is measured in a certain way, but comes through either the skills that we have, comes through our ability to problem solve, and I think importantly in today's world, also comes through our ability to communicate with internal stakeholders, external stakeholders well, because no business operates in isolation, right? And if anything, actually, interpersonal skills is an area which has never been focused upon, but is potentially one of the biggest need gaps in the Indian industry today, right? Just the ability to write quality emails, just the ability to pick up the phone and have a conversation with a partner or with a client. All of these things matter in the business world. So if we break this down and say, okay, will the definition of value that you add to an organization change? I think it'll fundamentally fall in three buckets, right? Organizations will look at monetary value, revenue, profitability, sales. If anything, that's becoming even more and more important. Most companies which are listed on the stock exchange, they live quarter to quarter, because eventually, depending on one or two of these metrics, that determines whether their market capitalization increases or not. But I think importantly, in a world which is so digitally uh, where digital is accessible to the last consumer of your product in the smallest city or village. I think, managing value is also how do our employees manage our reputation, because your reputation can be destroyed very easily in a digital world. How do you bring recognition to the organization through innovation, through disruption, to thinking, in a cliched way out of the box. And then, of course, today organizations are being held extremely accountable by society, right? And therefore, even your ability to help the organization give back to society in a way is value that you can add to the organization. That's where sustainability, diversity, all of that start to play a critical role. And many of the new roles that, even though it's not affected by AI, are starting to emerge in this area. And then, of course, the value that you create internally is, as a manager or a leader, how do you help retain your teams? How do you help proliferate the right culture and organization? And most importantly, I would say, how do you as a professional not only build your own skills and continue to upgrade your skills, but also help your team upgrade their skills? And I think that, to my mind, would be the value, the way an organization looks at you as a knowledge worker. So I don't think it's unidimensional. I think organizations expect a lot more from their associates. And I think you will have a role to play in all of this. Again, it's not necessary that AI will have a role to play in all of this, but it does tell you that the expectations from organizations from you as a knowledge worker are going to be significantly more, right? And when we look at, what are the skills required? So I was reading this interesting study done by the World Economic Forum, and they were talking about what are the core skills that organizations are looking for based on a survey of some 900 countries across the world. And if you look at the top 10, right, you'll see that, technology or technology literacy is one of them. It's not the only one. AI and big data is still at number 15. But a lot of these things like analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, curiosity and lifelong learning, dependability and attention to detail. I think a lot of these are human skills which potentially machines will never be able to deliver. Yes, machines can probably deliver agility, but we're still far away from machines beating humans on creative thinking. I think machines can learn, yes, but I think the fundamental construct of human beings of being curious animals gives us an advantage. Yes, dependable and attention to detail machines can replicate, but a lot of the things that happen in human to human interaction, I think that's why machines will never be able to replicate the trust that you build with co-workers, the empathy that you build with your own teams. I think that's why machines will always have a disadvantage. So I don't think all hope is lost. I think even as a knowledge worker today, the skills that you can develop don't necessarily have to be in the traditional STEM space, right, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I think those are not that they're not important, But I think there are a lot of human skills that will continue to be significantly relevant in an AI world, and organizations are looking for those skills, right? Because organizations also recognize that technology will disrupt a lot of the functions that they have. Technology and automation will reduce their dependency on humans in certain parts of the business. But what they're looking for from their workforce is skills and capabilities that are very, very human in their core essence, and potentially machines will have or take many, many years to be able to replicate with the same degree of effectiveness, right? And just to underline that point, this slide talks about, again, those companies that were surveyed. What are the skills that they believe will grow even more in the future, right? And interestingly, creative thinking, curiosity, all of these continue to remain. Yes, AI and big data start to emerge here. And I think that also means that, even if you are not a tech person, I think a fundamental understanding of what is AI is important, because eventually it's going to touch some part of your life. And I think organizations don't expect every single employee to be an expert or a data scientist or an analytics expert, but organizations expect you to understand the fundamentals of things that are going to be a big part of the job that you're doing in the organization, right? Uh, and I think, therefore, I think while you don't have to become an expert in AI, but along with some of the core human innate skills that you need to develop, I think don't shy away from technology. Learn as much as you need to and as much as you can. But I think there's no running away from the reality that it's going to be a big part of your life in some form or the other, right? And I think organizations are also saying that they expect employees to have at least an understanding of AI and ML and technology to the extent that is relevant to the jobs that they do, right? Uh, but I think beyond even skill sets, I think there's even a fundamental shift in thinking in what kind of skill sets you need to build. So I think we are moving from STEM to STEAM. And I think the difference that's coming is arts and creative thinking. And I think this is what drives critical thinking abilities, right? Because science, tech, engineering, and mathematics are very logical left brain functions. I think the arts, creative thinking, innovation, product innovation, design, all of those comes from, I think, developing capabilities here. Now, I'm sure everybody's thinking, but I'm not a creative person. And I don't think you need to be. But I think uh, learning to hone some of these capabilities, which are right brained, I think is also critical in a world where leaders are expected to be able to balance both and bring both to the table, right? And I know it's not easy, but the truth is that that's what organizations need. And again, science, tech, engineering, and mathematics can all be disrupted by machines. Arts still is very much the human domain. So I think people who are in the creative business shouldn't look at AI and saying, oh God, it's going to take away my job. I think how you adapt to what your skill of creativity can bring in a more evolved modern ecosystem, I think is what is the way you should look at it. Because certainly there is a significant role for that kind of thinking in today's world of business, right? And part of it is also because of this, right? Organization structures have changed or are changing. It's not happening everywhere, but in many multi-product companies, there is nothing called as, hierarchies have gone. There are multiple product teams which are constantly working with support functions. And at the same time, there could be four different products being developed in an organization by four different teams, multi-skill, multi-functional teams, where the reporting is not necessarily vertical upwards, but could be even horizontal reporting. Now, while this hasn't, I think, seen the light of day in many organizations in India, but we are starting to see this more and more. So my sense is in the next 5 to 6 years, you'll see many companies operating with a very fluid kind of organizational structure and not this very traditional hierarchical structure. Now, why does that matter? What has it got to do with AI and ML? I think because one of the things that will definitely happen in multifunctional teams is that you will be dealing with people who potentially are more technocrats, who understand technology better. I think, therefore, when you work in such multidisciplinary teams, I think coming cold from outside with absolutely no knowledge, irrespective of your function, is going to be a disadvantage. And therefore I say you need to embrace AI, because you will be working with either people who are very embedded in AI in some form or the other, or you'll be using processes, tools, and tech, which is all AI enabled. So I would say learn, try, and participate. There are enough of free AI tools available online. No point in shying away from it. There are some fantastic AI courses which are available online. Think about doing them so that you don't have to become a programmer, you don't have to learn Python, but you need to understand the fundamentals of AI so that any job that you're going into, which will eventually entail working with some kind of AI-led tech, allows you to be far more comfortable with what's happening versus being completely in the dark, right? Uh, I think fluidity is something that again becomes essential, because as technology invades organizations, job descriptions are changing, reporting structures are changing. In some cases, you may not even have a team, right? So for many years, I had a team of 25, 30, 40, at one point of time, 150 people. But today I'm an individual contributor, right? Because the nature of my role demands that I don't need a full team, but I have to work collaboratively with multiple teams, right? And of course, when you work in a very hierarchical traditional structure, switching to a very different kind of structure takes time, but again, it's the nature of the beast, right? And remember, organizations you work in will get disrupted, and therefore restructuring of organizations will become much more frequent. What used to happen once in 3 years may start happening much more frequently, and I think adapting to that change is extremely essential, right? And like I said, collaboration is significantly important, because you will be working in things like project teams versus functional teams. The fact is that you will be working with people who have very different skill sets, because organizations are bringing those skill sets in. Many of them will be technology skill sets, and you don't want to be left behind, at least in terms of basic understanding, right? So learning, unfortunately, remains a core part of what you do, even after you finish this course from emeritus, right? And I think it's reflecting in the kind of new jobs which are appearing. In our business of media and marketing and advertising, creative technologist is now a new job function, where you need a person who is is a creative person, but also has a passion for technology. And therefore, that person is able to combine the latest tech and build an idea that can work for a business or a brand, right? So very, very interesting. It's impossible to find people like this easily, but that's a job that definitely has many takers in the industry today, especially on the marketing side. Then, of course, with AI proliferating every company, there's a massive ethical issue about AI, because eventually AI is about how have you trained your algorithm, what is the source of data. And if you use historical data, you're going to carry forward the mistakes or errors of historical data into the future. Uh, for example, today when tech companies interview, they use typically a AI platform to do the first level of screening. And then the candidate, if they pass, they meet a actual physical interviewer. Now, if that AI interface has been designed using historical data, let's say in the software industry, historical data would show that 90% of software engineers were men. Automatically, if you've trained the AI platform to evaluate a new candidate, that bias of having been trained on 90-95% of data from male candidates is going to create bias in the AI algorithm, which will eventually reject women only because of that error. And that's just a very simple example. There's a lot more ethical issues related to AI, and that itself is going to become an important job, because just like you have a compliance officer from a legal point of view, many companies will have a AI ethicist or an AI ethics compliance officer whose focus will be on ensuring that all the AI algorithms used by the company are built on ethical data sources. Of course, there'll be a third-party auditor which will come in to audit whether companies are using ethical data or not. Trend spotters in a world where things are changing so fast are becoming really important. Simple things like an AI explainer, somebody who can actually help explain to different functions within an organization what is this new automation that has been brought in, and why they can trust it, right? Because people are always afraid of technology, to things like even forensic auditors. So I think in a way, because of the nature of the data that is being generated through digital, because of the power of algorithms that now AI, scientists or data scientists are able to write, and the fact that we have the big tech companies having created very, very powerful AI algorithms, which are now available on open source for companies to adapt. All of that means is that very few industries, can afford to even stay away from this. You will see increasing adoption across the board, and that's going to result in existing jobs, some of which may become redundant, existing jobs, some of which will change in the nature of what they do, and then a whole new set of jobs that will emerge in those industries. Can you predict what's going to happen? Very, very difficult. I don't think anybody in their right sense of mind would try that. But I think the only thing that we can do potentially as knowledge workers is be prepared, because there's only one mantra, and that mantra is, be a learner. I think, I would say that yes, AI is going to disrupt your career, but the only way to stay on top or stay ahead is for you to ensure that you don't remain a stranger to AI, and you yourself, take the effort to learn more about it, because whether you like it or not, it's going to be a big part of your life. All right, so I'm going to stop right here. I'm hoping that I didn't bore the hell out of you over this last 50 minutes. But I'd love to take questions since we have another 10 minutes more before you head out into your Friday evening. So if any of you have questions of any kind, raise your hand, put on your mic. Happy to answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Anand. We have some questions in the chat box. I'll read them to you.
Sure, let me open the chat box. That's cool.
Yeah.
Let me start from the top. Okay. Okay, don't mute. Okay, 1 minute. Okay. One can see that synthetic data formed by Google based on user history and behavior over the net. Mine was pretty close. You can even guess your family income simply based on your online activity pattern. Right. So that was, I think, Subhadra Manta from talking about synthetic data. So the truth is, as you can see, it's already being used for you in some form or the other. Uh, how can someone from a non-tech background say sales changes domain to AI? Look, I at the end of the day, becoming a data scientist is not everybody's cup of tea. I think you should be truthful about what you like and what you're capable of. Uh, like personally, I can never see myself as a data scientist, because not because I didn't have maths in my engineering, but because I just don't see myself doing that job. Now, I think what's important as a salesperson is that, for example, even if you're in B2B sales, you will be using tools where a lot of your prospecting, let's say, for example, if you're using Salesforce, right? Salesforce, the entire CRM is actually run on AI, where your lead scoring will happen through an AI engine. Now, as a salesperson, your ability to appreciate what that AI engine is doing and how are they scoring a lead, right? Using AI.